Good evening and welcome to another episode of the WVU Alumni webinar series. Tonight, we'll be joined by two West Virginia natives, Dr. Eloise Elliott and Dr. Sam Zizzi from the Center for Active West Virginia. We'll learn more about their ongoing efforts to successfully impact the physical activity levels of West Virginia adults and children through collaboration, research, policy, and practice. Dr. Elliott serves as the Ware Distinguished Professor in the College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences, or CPAS, at WVU. Dr. Elliott's primary focus is on outreach and research that will improve the health and well-being of the citizens of West Virginia, with a particular interest in children and their families. Her noted leadership roles include the development and implementation of population-based interventions, including the first West Virginia Physical Activity Plan, 2 statewide physical activity symposiums to improve physical activity participation and healthy living in children, adolescents, and families in school and community settings. Dr. Elliott has developed and continues to maintain Active Academics, a nationally recognized web-based resource for K-8 classroom teachers to integrate physical activity throughout the school day. She serves as the co-director of the West Virginia Cardiac Project, a statewide children's health surveillance and intervention initiative, in collaboration with the WVU School of Medicine. Most recently, she co-chairs the CPAS Center for Active West Virginia to provide an effective statewide physical activity framework to promote population sector input and collaboration, facilitate physical activity research among multidisciplinary teams, and guide state and local policy and practice. Our second guest, Dr. Sam Zizzi, is also a co-director for that Center of Active West Virginia, which we'll talk a lot about tonight. He serves as an Associate Dean for Research in the College of Physical Activity and Sports Sciences here at WVU. He received his BA in psychology from James Madison University, completed his MS in exercise science from UNC Chapel Hill, and finished his graduate work in 2000 at WVU with his doctorate in sports psychology. After graduating, Dr. Zizzi completed the requirements to become a certified consultant through AASP and was listed on the United States Olympic Committee Sports Psychology Registry. He's worked with numerous athletes at WVU and in exercise settings, helping youths and adults to start and maintain healthy and active lifestyles. We are so glad to have Dr. Elliott and Dr. Zizzi here at WVU and here with us tonight. Hello.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hello. Thank you both so much for being willing to spend some time with us tonight. I know the work that you are doing sometimes has a lasting impact, but often a hidden impact on the citizens of West Virginia. And I'm really glad that you are here to talk with us about that tonight. And so for those in the audience that might not be aware of the Center for Active West Virginia, why don't we get started with just an overview of what the center does and what your roles entail. And Eloise, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, Meredith, you did a pretty good job of describing what we do in the center with your introduction there. But like you said, we have developed the Center for Active WV in our college in CPAS to provide that kind of an effective statewide hub, if you will, for physical activity that will, like you mentioned, help guide policy and practice across the state related to physical activity. So, our vision is to really help contribute to increasing physical activity levels of all of our citizens, of children and adults and older adults as well. And we want to do that in collaboration with a lot of different partners and to help make those environmental and systems and policy changes. We really strive to support those things that are going on in the state at the local and at the state level related to physical activity promotion. And then we also develop our own initiatives to promote physical activity. I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime there, Sam. As you mentioned, we co-direct the center, and we have since its inception a few years ago. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the resources that we provide to the West Virginia residents?
Absolutely. Happy to be here too, Meredith. It's exciting to get to talk about some of our work. We've been at this for a few years now, and Eloise with the plan many years before me. So it's a lot of fun to talk about these things because we don't do a lot of self-promotion. So this is a good time to let alumni and a lot of our own colleagues know about that work. There's 3 groups of people we generally work with out of the center, and those, or I would say 3 settings. We work in school settings, in communities, and then also in healthcare in terms of promoting physical activity. So some of the resources might be a little different across those settings. Eloise has a particular expertise in school settings, so our resources might be for teachers or for those sorts of physical activity projects that would be appropriate in the school setting. So some might be after school, some might be during the school day. And of course, there could be advocacy work for policies related to physical education, physical activity during the school day. So we have a variety of resources that would be appropriate for school-age kids and also for teachers in that environment. In the community setting, we primarily do things like park enhancements and trail work. So the resources we would provide would be like toolkits if they're going to enhance trails in their community. And so we might be able to advise something very simple like helping them with a vendor to buy equipment that they could put on trails if they wanted to put like cardiovascular equipment. Or we might be something more comprehensive, like if they want to do planning related to trails or pedestrian infrastructure in their town, we might help them facilitate that process, either with like a physical meeting or with some sort of reading or connection that would get them started on that process, or maybe some mapping. With the healthcare setting, it's really about the prescription of physical activity to patients who might need that. So if I have a patient with diabetes and I want to refer them to a physical activity program or to get them walking on their own, we have resources that would help them make that a simple process for them.
I love to hear that these resources are out there, and I'm sure that you're probably developing more, as I'm sure you have lots of plans for the future, which I know we'll talk about later. But so let's go back to a very basic level, right? We have folks with varying levels of understanding about just about sports science and physical activity who are joining us tonight. And we hear all the time that healthy living is important. We know that we need to be making smart choices, but what type of positive impact can healthy living and healthy choices have on communities?
Eloise, you want to start?
Well, let's see. You go ahead, Sam.
No problem. Well, the big picture really is that we're trying to enable policies, systems, and environments so that the decision to be physically active is the easiest choice. What we have in West Virginia, a lot of our rural infrastructure, the things that make the state beautiful, also make it very difficult to be safely walking and safely biking. So we work with partners in those communities to figure out what would be an appropriate solution for you all. So if it's a very rural place, and maybe the school is the best place for someone to be physically active, we might help a community figure out how to put a trail there or connect that school somehow to a neighborhood in a convenient way. But we're probably not going to strike bike lanes across a rural road, right? So there'll be different strategies that we would help modify the environment or some sort of system. A system would be like a healthcare system now has a way to prescribe physical activity in a very easy way. And so those changes make the decision to be physically active easier for everyone. So then instead of focusing on like trying to educate people or increase people's motivation, which is an individual type of concept, these are more public health type of approaches where we're trying to reach a large audience. And we also want to make sure there's an emphasis in this work on health equity so that those who are at the most disadvantage and the least likely to be physically active have just as much access to these changes as anyone else.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add too. So we want to try to bring the greatest health benefits to the greatest number of people. So, and kind of help fill those health gaps that are there because of, it could be income, it could be the environment, it could be education, it could be race. So whatever it is that's causing the health gaps, that's what we're trying to help alleviate in these communities that we work in, and particularly in these rural communities.
And so it sounds like the work that you do at this center has the power not just to impact the habits and patterns of individual, but also of individual people, but really has the potential to impact the state in kind of a broader way through the healthcare system and economic development, and really kind of a big picture downstream effect.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, the partnerships we have with health systems, individual hospitals, obviously could have a large impact on a lot of patients in the course of a year. So if we can get a new policy or a new system in place, it takes a lot of time, but it could affect hundreds and then potentially thousands of patients.
You mentioned the cardiac project in my introduction. That project is a project that began in the School of Medicine in the Department of Pediatrics with Dr. Bill Neal. And I started working with that project years ago, and we have now moved that project we're still in collaboration with Department of Pediatrics, but it is under the umbrella of the center now. And if you're not familiar with that, you can learn much more about it at the center website. But basically, we do health screenings in the school settings with elementary children. And from that, we identify those health risks in children, inform their parents, educate their families, and also inform primary care physicians about these kids that are at high risk. And so that's another kind of health related project that you will find under the umbrella of the center now.
So, Eloise, I know you've also worked on the WVU physical activity plan, which I know a little bit about, but could you talk to us about how that came to be and how I think it's now kind of the catalyst for the center and its mission?
Yeah, it really came about back in 2010. The National Physical Activity Plan was released. And it really set the stage for this overall framework that brought in priority areas and sectors and or strategies and tactics for 9 different societal sectors, and how they're all responsible for physical activity promotion. And so, including not just public health and education, but transportation and healthcare systems and, all kinds of nonprofit organizations and so forth. And so with the launch of that plan, some of us, primarily in CPAS, but also we brought in a lot of other stakeholders around the state. We got together and said, one of the recommendations from the national plan was that states also develop their own state-specific plans that would really meet the context of that environment. So it took about 1.5 years for us to develop the physical activity plan, the West Virginia Physical Activity Plan. It is also on the center website that you can see. But we also looked at all those different population sectors. We have brought together a number of stakeholders from all over the state that had expertise in these different areas of these different sectors and helped develop that plan. And so one of the things we're working on right now is to revise the plan. The national plan has been revised. We need to revise the state plan as well. But we see that as really just kind of like a model, a framework for all societal sectors to get involved in promoting physical activity. And so that's something Sam and I are working on now, is really, again, trying to promote the plan.
And so, speaking about your work at the center, I know you both you're teachers and researchers. How do you split up the way that you dedicate your time in academia to the work that you're doing between the center and the rest of your responsibilities?
It's a great challenge. I don't think we have a great answer for that. It's sort of like having your brain divided in multiple pieces. It certainly keeps life interesting, that's for sure. It's that one of the best things about faculty life, and frankly working at WVU, is the opportunity to create the job as you kind of move on as a faculty member here. This is my 20th year on the faculty, and so in that time I've had many different opportunities and this one with Eloise for the last few years has been awesome. And it's just a nice addition to my professional development to get to be out of Morgantown, go into some of the more rural counties, see what the partners are doing. And so what I find is that work initially was more for me to like fill up and like get out into the West Virginia and help my state. But then when I was getting back in the classroom, I found that those were amazing examples that all of a sudden students are relating to. And actually just today in class, after class, I'm teaching a class that's exercise psychology. It's part of our major in sport and exercise psychology. And I had a student stay after class who's from Clay County, which is one of the counties in which we work and do physical activity stuff. And she was expressing an interest in some of the things I was talking about in class, and she wants to get involved this summer. So it's just a beautiful connection between work that's going on through the center and now an opportunity that will present for this girl to give back to the state, maybe get some experience that will help her get to graduate school. And so for me, that's the fun part, is the connectivity between the teaching, some of this service that we're doing. And then of course we do try to publish research and write reports about the data that comes out of these projects as well. So I love the mix of all those.
And that was a point I was going to make, is that our research is often action-based research that comes out of our service. So we're not sitting in our offices thinking of what kind of research we can do and what survey we can send and so forth. But our research comes from this work that we're doing in the state. And so it's very meaningful.
So my next question, I'm glad that you mentioned that student, Sam. I'm curious, what opportunities are there for undergraduate students and graduate students to be involved with the center in different capacities?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've had over the years, we've had undergrads do internships either for credit or for not through the center, and they'll gain experience that could be coming from public health or coming from the CPAS angle or psychology. And we have a couple lined up to help with us this fall as well. From a graduate student standpoint, we have 2 or 3 graduate students now funded, Eloise.
I think we have 2 that are funded right now, and we'll have another additional one in the fall. So we'll have 3 GTAs, or not GTAs, but GAs in the fall that work on various aspects of the project. So they have different responsibilities, but they work with different projects within the center.
Yeah, because these projects, and maybe we didn't make that clear at the front, I mean, the big projects that we run through the center are funded from external sources. So they provide funding for us to give into communities, which we give out like community grants. They also help students then enroll at WVU, and they pay for their stipend while they're here. So they can go for free, and they gain that experience in the center. So right now there's more graduate students involved because we have more funding for graduate students. And then we have a little bit of room at the undergraduate level as well.
And Meredith, I forgot to finish answering your question. I think you wanted to know how the center then was the initial thing that kind of prompted us to develop the plan, was what prompted us to develop the center. And I didn't mention too that we also, Sam took over a physical activity network that was first of all developed by the West Virginia Development Hub, and in around 2014 or something. So we had the network, and we had the plan, and we knew they needed somewhere to live. And so we felt that we needed to develop this center because it kind of met the goal of the university as well. The land grant university goal of enhancing the well-being and the quality of life of West Virginians, and also what we do in CPAS it just seemed to fit. So we proposed the center to our dean and was approved. So that's kind of where we got from the plan to the center.
Oh, wow. And so from what I understand, you also both hold endowed professorships here at WVU. Could you tell us about what that position entails and what the meaning is behind those endowed positions?
Yeah, sure. I can go first if you don't mind, Eloise. And
Sure.
so my endowment is from Dr. Pat Fell, who was a longtime faculty member in what was the School of Physical Education at the time. And she endowed I believe a $3.4 million gift, which at the time was the largest gift in the history of CPAS. So maybe someone out there watching can maybe match that or do better the next time. But so that endowment is meant to focus on someone who's doing research and service towards physical activity and chronic disease. It doesn't have to be to the state of West Virginia, but it's a logical fit through the center to do that. And so it specifically provides more time for a faculty member to do research and they have a lower teaching load so that they can sort of go out and get externally funded work. And so since I've had that endowment, which has now been about 3 years, I believe, I've really been able to invest more time in this sort of work, and that's really starting to pay off.
And my endowed professorship is called the Ware Distinguished Professorship, and it was provided by Alan D. Ware and the Ware Family Foundation. And as we've spoken about Alan D. earlier, they were both graduates of WVU and CPAS, which was also then the School of Physical Education. And they were both very active alumni throughout their lives. And so they had a real passion for improving the health of West Virginians and particularly children. And they were also very concerned about the childhood obesity epidemic. And so their desire was to name a faculty member who would really focus on their work on improving healthy lifestyles in West Virginia, and really focus on physical activity and healthy eating. And so I'm the second faculty member to hold this position. The first one was Dr. Linda Carson. And I think I was selected because of my great interest in what they were interested in, and then also my previous work in service to the state in this area.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that, because I think, without having a chance to explain that, I'm not sure folks would know what the meaning and the symbolism is behind those positions and what the name of that chair means and kind of what it enables you to do in that role. So thank you for sharing that. Before I ask you both some additional questions, I want to remind the audience that we are excited to hear what questions you all have for Sam and Eloise. So if you want to submit those through the questions function or as a comment, we will be excited to ask them, the audience, questions here in a few minutes. So, Eloise, you just mentioned the land grant mission, and I know that you both are very proud West Virginians. And so, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how the Active West Virginia kind of mission fulfills this long-standing purpose of WVU's land grant status by serving its home state kind of. I know you mentioned going into the communities a bit, but I think that there's probably a bit more to the potential impact of the work in what you're doing.
Yeah, it's one of the best things. I know both Eloise and I love to get out into the counties and meet these partners and form lasting relationships with them. I think our main goal in the center is to put wind in the sails of people who are already doing really good work. They're already built their boat. They already put the sail up, and we're like, maybe we can provide some support from expertise standpoint. Maybe we can give them some grant funding to push them on. And the idea is that we want to create positive stories out of what's happening in West Virginia to combat many negative stories that come out relative to West Virginia, all the problems that West Virginia has. So what we know, because we're passionate about it and we have so many contacts, is there are amazing people doing work related to physical activity in their community, either in their healthcare, in their schools. And we want to highlight that work and give them a bit of more of the juice of the university behind them. And, whether that's media, putting that out there, whether that's press releases that we can put out for them on social media elsewhere, or that's we can give them funding to support that work. That's what we want to do. So that's one of the things that's kept me here at West Virginia University is the opportunity to serve back to the state. I sort of felt like I got an opportunity to get a lot of education. I came from rural West Virginia, Randolph County, Elkins, West Virginia. I got a lot of years of education in me that somehow I got lucky enough to have. I feel like I needed to pay back at least that many years. And so one of the ways I'm trying to do that is in this work through the center, really.
And I think too, Sam and I are both, excuse me, are very passionate about West Virginia. And so we love working with the people here because we want to see West Virginia thrive. We want to see, like he said, we want to tell the good stories, the positive stories, not the negative stories that we so often see. And I too grew up in very rural West Virginia in a place called Smoot, West Virginia, in Greenbrier County, which probably no one has heard of, except Al Ware grew up in Rupert, West Virginia, which was also in Greenbrier County. So we were very close. But I think that, like Sam said, we both had opportunities to leave the state and go elsewhere. And we both came back home, and we have such a great opportunity here at WVU to really try to improve the state. And that's what makes it so much fun for us to do this job.
So, excuse me. So, having studied and researched at several universities before finding your way back to West Virginia, kind of, what led you back here, and what pieces of that journey still influence your work as a researcher at the center and at WVU?
Yeah, for me, it's about students. That's the reason I'm at a university, is I love working with students, and I get a chance to work. I have a very unusual job here at WVU. I teach all the way from first year gen ed classes to doctoral dissertation seminars. So I get the full span of WVU students. I feel like I know the population here well. And so one of the things that keeps me here is, in many of my students, I can see myself, as an undergraduate student, thinking about COVID. I couldn't imagine like being a first year student and this is your first year. So it's very easy for me to be compassionate, knowing that I did not have the study skills. I had no idea how to manage my life at 18 or 19, and I can see them struggling. So it's, for me, it's just a chance to reach a hand out and to know that that's, I'm giving back to something very directly. So there's a lot of places that either one of us probably could be working at this point in time in our career, but maybe for me, none would be as meaningful as like being the faculty that stays here the whole time and tries to get something actually done.
And I think we answered that question somewhat with our last responses about just loving to be here. And I taught for 20 years at Concord University, which is in southern West Virginia. I know you can tell from my accent that I'm from the southern part of the state. I always get that. And so, now at WVU, where I can really focus so much of my time, I don't only teach doctoral level classes at WVU, but now I get to focus so much time on the service piece, which I didn't get to do before because I was too busy teaching. And so I love it all, and I understand how it all comes together. So I think just the things that we've talked about loving being here in the state of West Virginia and trying to serve our students, serve our communities and our state and the university.
Well, we are so glad that you found your way back to West Virginia and found your way to WVU. So, Sam, I have a question for you. For our alumni who are tuning in right now, whether they're in state or out of state, how can they get involved with the center and with some of your programs?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first thing you can do, check us out at activewestvirginia.org. I think you'll find our website to be pretty cool. And we've got a great company that works with us, who's actually a West Virginia company that developed the website and does a lot of our media. They're actually from Southern West Virginia. So check that out. You can sign up to get our newsletter and become just an affiliate, a personal affiliate of the center. So anyone could do that. And then they'll get all the communications that come out of the center. You can follow us on social media. Be Active West Virginia, pretty much on all the platforms. So you can add us, and we'll get back and we'll check you out. And then in addition to that,
you can email us. Our emails are on there. Sam and I answer emails very, very quickly.
Too regularly. Yes, that's true. And then, we're looking for somebody to name. We'd love to name the center after a West Virginia donor or an alum, so we are. I know in our next big capital campaign, as part of the outreach, we will be looking for names for all of our centers. So if somebody's out there that does want to really associate with this. And that would allow us to expand our capacity and simply to do more of this outreach and at a larger scale. So that's a big opportunity that will be out there for somebody.
Or to fund any of the projects that we're doing or that we have in the docket to do soon.
That's very exciting. Are there, Eloise, are there any new initiatives that are in the works that you could give us a sneak preview of tonight?
Well, the things that Sam has already mentioned, we're obviously expanding those. And I mentioned that we wanted to revise the physical activity plan and do a better job now of marketing, disseminating that, and then evaluating how we're doing with that. And related to evaluating, we have in a plan this kind of mapping the progress of what's going on in the state. And it's modeled after a national, it's called the, it's done by the American College of Sport Medicine, and it's the U.S. Fitness Index. And using a lot of data that's already collected on health, you assess different counties or communities or cities or whatever, and really look at what their successes are, what they're doing really well, what they need help with, and then write community action plans for them and be a technical assistant to them in helping their communities to do these things. So that's kind of something we have in the plans for the future. But of course, that takes some funding too. So we have Sam and I have a lot of ideas along with our executive management team and others that we work with. And so it's just a matter of, back to what you ask, is how do we do all of this and everything else we do with our full-time jobs.
Yeah, we need another endowed faculty member, so that would be great to have another one associated with the center. We have a couple of counties that we work more intensely with depending on the projects. The project I mentioned that was in Clay County is also in McDowell County. That's funded by the CDC. So it's a sort of a high obesity project that one of our colleagues, Emily Murphy, who's a faculty member in our college, she runs that. So what we're hoping to do is we have intense relationships with those counties. We're doing a lot of stuff with food access and physical activity access. So as we learn those best practices, we do hope to replicate those and to get funding to do them in other counties as well, because we're learning a lot about how to do community-wide planning, how to put physical activity coalitions together, what sort of projects you can pull off easily with what amount of money. So we are learning a lot by studying in those two counties. Now we're in, I think my last count was over 40 counties. We have active partnerships where we're either collecting research data or we're delivering intervention. So out of West Virginia's 55 counties, we're probably in 80% with some connection from the center. But we're not always at the same level of intensity in every one of those counties. You know what I mean? It might be one school or two schools that we partnership in that county. So the new initiatives would be, as we get more capacity, more graduate students that could work with us, more faculty that have time, we hope to expand and have a stronger presence in more counties.
Well, so this has been such a great overview of the center and the value of your work. And I think we're ready to transition into taking some questions from the audience. And as we continue to ask these questions, for those who are joining us at home, please feel free to continue to submit those questions. And our first one, Sam, you just started to get into this a bit, but I'm going to ask in case there's anything else that either of you would like to add. Where do you hope to see the center in 5 to 10 years? Let's say if the campaign goes well.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think both Eloise and I aspire that it will become a university level center, which means it has to have $1 million in annual funding coming in directly to the center. We're about halfway there now. So between the projects that we have coming in, we have a little over $500,000 right now. So if we can get a couple other projects lined through the center, once it becomes a university level center, you get a little bit more support. University might start to back that. So then it's sort of like a matching. So I'm hopeful that will be the case. And then I think hopefully our footprint and the amount of tools that we can provide, sort of toolkits and resources we can provide, will be more robust as well.
Awesome. That's very exciting. I can't wait to see where things go. Our next question, what is the greatest challenge you face in working to change policy on a broad scale?
So, you know,
Well,
it takes forever. I think
it depends on what level we're on. So if we're talking about, state policy, that's a whole different thing. We've been involved in, or I've been involved in a few different policy kind of advocacy for different policies. Helped write a bill back in 2005 that actually passed, but it's very hard to get policies passed at the state level related to physical activity. Sam can tell you a story about this year's legislature who tried to pass a bill that we didn't want them to pass related to physical activity or related to trail use. But
thank goodness.
Policy at the local level even is hard, but it's doable if you can convince the policy leaders and the policy makers that what you're selling can make a difference in their local area. And I think more when I talk about this, about changing environments in schools where you change the policy, where kids have more recess or kids have more PE, or there's more things offered for them to do after school, or classroom teachers are required to offer at least 15 minutes of movement in the classroom every day. So those are all small policy changes at the local level, which are easier to achieve at the individual local levels once administrators are convinced of its importance.
Yeah, and I don't think we have the clout quite yet in the state to be, advocating or doing, we don't aspire to do lobby work because we're part of WVU. They already do plenty of that on their own. So I think our approach right now is more grassroots first. So county level, school level policies, if we're working with a food pantry level policies, shared use policies for local, communities to be able to access indoor facilities, which is very important in rural areas so that they're available to kids and adults when schools are not in use. So we've really taken more of a local level approach to policy, and because that's where we can move the needle right now.
Mm-hmm. Our next question is along a similar topic. How long does it take for a new program or initiative to go from an idea to fully implemented?
Well, it depends on how many people you have to help work on it. So, and how big the initiative is. I mentioned that the physical activity plan, the West Virginia Physical Activity Plan, took 1.5 years to develop. But other programs might take a shorter amount of time. So it just really depends on what the initiative or the program is. But you can't ever expect anything to happen. We learned early on that if you don't do a needs assessment before you try to implement something, then you have it all backwards. So you have to, first of all, assess the need of the community or who you're trying to serve before you try to develop something. And the second thing you have to do is get buy-in from the people that you will be working with. Because if you don't have buy-in, you could have $100,000 to spend on their project, but if they don't trust you and don't believe you, you won't be able to successfully implement.
Yeah, and it does take a little longer. We do take a community-based, it's what's called a community-based participatory approach to our research projects. And that means that whomever we're working with, an extension agent, a school teacher, is going to be asked to comment and help us adjust what we're doing, because we believe their expertise is as important as our expertise. That's sort of the difference in the model of, instead of us going to fix you, that just doesn't work in rural communities. They don't want that. They don't want that. So they have to sort of trust us. We have to go back 2 and 3 times. So that initiative sometimes will take a little longer, right? Maybe it takes till the second year really where it starts to flourish, but we've prepared the ground, using the gardening analogy, we've prepared the ground now so that the stuff can actually grow there. as opposed to going in there and just shoving in some tomatoes that are already grown. That's really not the approach that we're taking.
That's very helpful. We have another question for you from the audience. What do you love the most about your job?
Eloise, you go first.
I just really love, as I mentioned earlier, I love the fact that I can actually serve the state of West Virginia and travel, go out, visit these rural communities, help where help is needed if we can, and just the whole service aspect of my job. I teach, I do research, but I think what I love the best is just the opportunity to actually really feel like I could potentially be a part of something that is making a difference.
Yeah, for me, it's investing in the students. That's the legacy when you're a faculty member. You don't build houses. You don't get to go look at buildings that you create. You don't build bridges. So you invest in humans. And then, sometimes that takes 4 years, 5 years of time. And that's the legacy for me. So that's the best part of the job is the investment in the students. And then the return on that in terms of what I learned from those students is pretty incredible as well. So that's like just a beautiful intrinsic thing that keeps me coming back to work all the time. And it also is very different. The only part I don't like about working with students is they're the same age and I come to class, but I keep getting older every year. So it's a little bit of a problem, but I'm getting better at it.
This next question is going to be a tough one. Where is your favorite outdoor recreation spot in the state?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. I love snowshoe. And so
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, like that we share that too, but we share different reasons. I actually prefer it in the summer. I love to ski and I love to snowboard, but I love hiking there. And so Pocahontas County, even though I'm from Randolph, no disrespect to my home county, I love Pocahontas County. I love Tucker County. So, those places in that region are my favorite. Seneca Rocks and Snowshoe. That's a Canaan. That sort of area there in Tucker. That's my spot.
Yeah, I like all that too, and I really like Snowshoe. Have my family all now skiing, and so my grandkids, my kids. So that's really nice. So I think I'd have to say Snowshoe is my favorite spot. I like to go there in the summer as well, too.
Me too. And then we have one last question for you from the audience tonight. As two very successful professors, what advice would you give to an aspiring faculty member?
Actually, pretty interesting, because I was just talking to one of my PhD students this morning. And he asked this question. He asked like a very similar version of this question. And I said, the only thing you got to do is take care of the opportunity right in front of you. Like, that's it. All you have to do is do well at the next project. You don't need to worry about, I really haven't honestly had a single professional goal in my life. And so all I've tried to do is take care of what was in front of me. And then everything else you can choose among opportunities that are presented. So the opportunity, the thing you're doing right now, as my mentor, Ed Etzel, taught me, was whatever you do matters and whatever you don't do matters. So it's that thing that you're doing right now that is the most important thing.
And I just spoke as a guest speaker in a class of doctoral students a couple of weeks ago. And I kind of said the same thing, is take every opportunity that you have to do new things. Like, even if you don't think you might be quite qualified for it, but you're offered that by a senior faculty member or, your mentor or whoever it is, another, someone in your profession, you've given opportunities to do new things. Try it, do it, because that you learn so much from that. So, and meet people. Take that opportunity to meet everybody you can that writes the research that you read, that goes to the conferences you go to, and that's how you learn. And follow your dreams. Figure out. Don't think that what you know right now as a young professional is not going to change. It will change. if you have a lot of experiences.
Well, thank you for that wisdom. Before we say goodbye to you both, could you remind our audience of the best ways to stay up to date with everything happening at the center?
I think Sam mentioned that before. If you just go to our website, you can find a place where you can sign up for the newsletter. You can become what do we call the people?
An associate.
Yeah. And just and you can just look at all the different projects. They all have different websites to go to. And of course, you can contact Sam and I anytime about any questions you have or any information you'd like to share with us, because we learn every day something new from someone. So we would love to have your input as well.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear new ideas if you have about new projects or partnerships with organizations that we haven't thought about. Of course, we're excited to learn that, because we're, the best part of the center is we get to work with some amazing colleagues, and we don't have to talk to each other all the time. So the good news is we have a lot of people on the team that really help us do good work.
Well, thank you both for sharing all of the wonderful things that are happening at the Center for Active West Virginia and this dedication that you have to serve the people in your home state. I know that the work that you're doing is having both an immediate and also a sustaining impact, and we all can't wait to see where the work of the center goes in the future. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. Again, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So as we conclude this episode of the WVU Alumni Webinar Series, we hope that you will join us next week as we speak with Dr. Nathan Sorber to learn more about his vision for the Center for the Future of Land Grant Education. We'll also hear more about Dr. Sorber's reflections regarding WVU's land grant history and the critical research that he has produced. You can join us for that conversation next Wednesday, April 28th at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And as always, let's go Mountaineers.